Hello everybody and welcome to another video, and with it being relatively close to the beginning of the month, we are of course looking at Patreon requests from my patrons, and today's comes from Mistress Vicious, and she's asked me to look at a band called SEVI. Not familiar. So obviously I had to find out who this band is. And it turns out that SEVI is a Bulgarian rock band from Sofia. I don't think I've ever looked at a band from Bulgaria before, so this will be a first. The current members are Svetlana, or Sevi Blitznakova, on lead vocals, Ivo Galabov on lead guitar, Rally Velinov on bass guitar, and Nick Nikolaev on drums and percussion. The band describes their music genre as heart rock, a name given to their style due to the emotional, heartfelt content and messages of their songs. Okay. I'm looking forward to that, because, you know, I've been talking a lot about the emotional impact of music recently. Anyway. The debut album, What Lies Beyond, was released on June 14th, 2012, so relatively new, about 13 years in action, so relatively new, relatively speaking. There were 4 singles on the album, along with music videos for the first 2, Can't Stand the Pain and Limited Edition. These were released before the album, and the other 2, Victim and Speed Up, came a few months afterwards. On April 23rd, 2014, SEVI released On My Own, the first single on their second studio album, The Battle Never Ends. The band has released 4 studio albums to date and a live acoustic DVD from 2013. Over the years, SEVI has captured the public's attention for their original and recognisable sound, powerful female vocals and melodic songs, and has lined up alongside some of the most successful rock metal bands in Bulgaria. Again, I don't think I've covered any bands from Bulgaria so far, so that's interesting. The band has been part of the lineup of the biggest festivals in Bulgaria and has had numerous concerts around Europe. Their music has been highly appreciated by artists such as Gioeli, who is actually featuring on the song we're looking today, from Hardline, Axel Rudy Pell and Crush 40, Thomas Wikström from Therion, Jen Majura, however, from Evanescence, and Luca Princiotta for Doro Pesh, and also participated in collaborations with them on their albums. SEVI has also been invited to open shows for Europe, Blackstone Cherry, Tom Kiefer, Hollywood Vampires, and Evanescence whilst in Sofia. So they're building quite a successful name for themselves. Now, like I said, I don't think I've ever actually covered any bands from Bulgaria before, so this should be quite an interesting step into that side of things. So and heart rock, so a very emotional music. I'm very intrigued by that as well, because, you know, I've mentioned a lot recently, I've been talking a lot about the emotional weight and impact of music. You know, it's all very well writing emotional lyrics, but if your performance doesn't contain that emotional impact, it means nothing. You know, you could write the most beautiful emotional piece of music, but if you don't back it up with the performance, it falls flat and it loses all the emotional impact that you were aiming for. So I'm quite intrigued by this. Now, I've been asked to look at a track called Drowning, which, as I mentioned a second ago, features Johnny Gioeli. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. So I wanted to find out who he was, and I just had a quick look, and it says he's an American rock singer. He's the lead vocalist of Hardline, Crush 40, and Axel Rudy Pell's backing band. He's best known for his musical contributions to the Sonic the Hedgehog video game series since 1998 as part of Crush 40. So, was he the one responsible for that bloody annoying piece of music from Sonic Adventure? Because, God, I hated that piece of music. Anyway, getting off subject. So, yeah, I'm looking at a track today called Drowning. I've got a video here, I've got lyrics here, which I'm hoping are going to be accurate. And, you know, given the description of this band's genre, I'm very interested and very much looking forward to this. So we'll jump into this and see what we've got. But before we do that, if you could take a moment to like and subscribe if you haven't already, that would really, really mean the world to me. You know, I've been doing this for about 7-ish years at this point, and not even 3% of people watching my videos are actually subscribed. So, you know, if you could like and subscribe, it would really, really help me out. It doesn't cost you anything, it takes a fraction of a second, but it does make the biggest difference to me and to the channel. But with that being said, let's jump into this and see what we've got. So this is Drowning by SEVI, featuring Gioeli, or however you pronounce his name. So let's have a look. What a waste of beer! Anyway, not important.
Staring out from the window, searching the way. No thoughts, no feelings, no regrets I'm having. Just empty silence in my head, empty promises. I'm drowning. Another bridge has fallen. My dreams have all been stolen. No hope, no shelter, no respect. I have nothing, just empty silence in my head, empty promises. I'm drowning. I drown in the middle of nowhere. I'm falling, I'm falling. I drown in the middle of nowhere. I'm falling. Nothing ever will be the same. Nothing will be the same. I need you to come and save me. So let's forget the story. Another day will come. Your hopes, your dreams, your victories are still to come. Just take my hand, close your eyes, reach out and jump. We're drowning. I drown in the middle of nowhere. I'm falling, I'm falling. I drown in the middle of nowhere. I'm falling. Nothing ever will be the same. Nothing will be. But I need you to save
There you go. So that was Drowning by SEVI, featuring Johnny Gioeli, or how he pronounces his name. Very good. It is good. It's very good. Don't get me wrong. The whole heart rock thing, I can maybe see where they're coming from, because there is obviously a lot of emotional weight being put into this. It's obviously in a very emotional piece of music, but it's nothing special, if you get my meaning. It is very, very good. The execution is brilliant. It's flawless. The vocal performance, she has got an incredibly powerful voice. Music has got impact. The music sounds good, it's well executed, and the music itself does carry some of that emotional weight that I keep talking about. But there's nothing particularly special about it. There was a mention about a unique sound and, them sort of being special and standing out, but there isn't really anything in that particular song that shouts unique to me. Vocal wise, and musically wise, you could compare it to a lot of the female fronted rock icons of like the 80s. You could look at things like Heart, for example, or you could look at things like Roxette, or not Pat Benatar, it's not the one I'm trying to think of. I'm trying to think of the other woman whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. It doesn't particularly shout unique, but that's just by this song. They might have other tracks that really do make them stand out, but to me it's just, I don't want to say the word generic, because it was very well performed, but it's pretty much of a muchness when it comes to a female fronted rock band. I would actually say, like, for example, that The Warning has a more unique sound than this band here. Like I said, not to take anything away from them, they are a very good band. That the performance was brilliant. But, they made a big deal about them having a unique and signature sound. And from this example alone, I can't see it. There's nothing particularly special about them. But it was still good. Because like I mentioned, she's the singer, Svetlana, I think her name was, has got a very powerful voice. There is hints in there of I don't want to say much stronger, but of, there's sort of telltale signs that she could go into the sort of harsher vocal fry voice, that could lead you to remind you of like performances of Total Eclipse of the Heart. Who is that? Pat Benatar? I cannot remember. Bonnie Tyler, that's the one I was trying to think of. Bonnie Tyler. There's hints that she could sort of push that voice into Bonnie Tyler sort of areas of music. So there is the possibility that there are some maybe even heavier tracks, or there might be a slightly different style hiding away in some of their other music. But from this example alone, nothing special. But again, still very good. Now, when it comes to the fact that their songs are filled with emotion, you do get that in the performance. I've mentioned many, many, many times, people are probably sick of hearing me talk about it now, about the emotional weight in a performance, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the video. You can write the most emotionally charged lyrics you could possibly imagine. You can write the most heartbreaking song in the world, but if you don't back that up with a performance that also portrays that emotion, it's just going to fall flat. If you sing a completely monotone song, you're going to lose all of the emotional impact that those lyrics deserve. I actually looked at a song on this channel a little while ago, and it was a beautiful, hard-hitting, emotional piece of music. But the performance was so flat that I didn't get anything from it. You didn't feel the urgency, the heartbreak, and like the need that the lyrics deserved. It was a beautiful and heartbreaking piece of writing, but the performance was so flat. It lost everything. I felt nothing when I heard the piece of music. But here, you've got that emotional impact. I mean, at one point, the guy even went, and I mean, come on. It is so fucking cheesy. I mean, it's just like, that's like Backstreet Boys in sync levels of, I want to show how much I'm hurting inside, so I'm just going to sort of close my eyes, clench my fist, and it's hilariously bad. But either way, even just the vocal performance itself brought across the anguish of the song, and that's what you need. And like I said, even the music itself did hold that. It had the crescendos, it had the diminuendo, it had everything in it to show you, to give you the journey of what they're talking about. The moments where they were like bringing forth intense vocal performances, the music got louder and more intense, and then it sort of softened out when they were just sort of on the in-between, so the music itself also played its important role in the performance. Now, the song itself, I mean, you can get it just from the title, Drowning. It's about someone struggling, essentially, and calling out for help. And this is something I've mentioned before, is you should never be ashamed to call out for help if you need it. It's not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's more of a sign of strength, because that's admitting to yourself and admitting to the world around you that you're struggling, So asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength, because you're asking for help. You're saying, I'm not strong enough to do this alone. I need your help. And, admitting that you have fatal flaws is something that fundamentally we try and hide. We don't want to admit that we are having problems. So, asking for, admitting that you have problems and asking for assistance is, fighting against all your natural urges to hide everything. So it is a sign of strength. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Like I said, the song does seem to be it's not particularly deep, really. And it can be a little bit repetitive, but it's basically saying, I'm stuck in a situation, or I'm stuck in in a hard time of life. I'm struggling, I'm drowning, and I need help. That's basically it. That it doesn't go much deeper than that. It's, I'm struggling, I need help. That's it. That's about all it's saying. So it goes, staring out from my window, searching the way, no thoughts, no feelings, no regrets, I'm having nothing, just empty silence in my head, empty promises, I'm drowning. So essentially, this is somebody who's like, they sound completely apathetic. They're staring out the window, searching for a way, so they're just sort of sitting there, staring out the window, trying to figure out what to do with their life. How do I move forward from this point? No thoughts, no feelings, no regrets. They feel nothing. What's the word I'm looking for? I think it's anhedonic. They're deriving no pleasure from anything. It says, I'm having nothing, just empty silence in my head. So they're completely at a loss. They don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know where to go or what to do. They're just completely lost. They're drowning, essentially, because they have no idea what to do. Another bridge has fallen. My dreams have all been stolen. No hopes, no shelter, no respect. I have nothing, just empty silence in my head, empty promises. I'm drowning. So another bridge has fallen. So, like, I've lost all ties with someone else, or I've forever lost an opportunity to go and do something, so my world is crumbling around me, essentially. My dreams have all been stolen. Everything I wanted to do is now impossible to me. I have no hopes, no shelter, no respect. Again, I have nothing. I'm completely at a loss. Just empty silence, in my head, empty promises, I'm drowning. So, this person feels essentially completely out at sea. Like they're in the middle of a vast ocean and they have no options. That's basically the way they're seeing it. They can either just let themselves go and drown, or they can sit there holding on to hope that help might come. So then it goes into the chorus. It says, I drown in the middle of nowhere, I'm falling. I drown in the middle of nowhere, I'm falling. Nothing ever will be the same, nothing will be the same. But I will need you to come and save me. Come and save me. So, again, this is what I meant by the song's a little bit repetitive, because everything they're saying is they're essentially saying the same thing over and over again. I'm drowning in the middle of nowhere. I'm stuck, like I said, in the middle of a vast ocean, or even in the middle of a desert. Everywhere I look is just completely barren wasteland, or, it's a completely wide open ocean. I see nothing on the horizon that can help me. I can see no options. I don't know where to go, what to do, who to turn, what direction to go. I'm just lost. I'm falling. Nothing will ever be the same, because where do I go from here? It says that I need you to come and save me. And that's an important part in times of crisis, is to ask for help. Like I said before, there is no shame in asking for help. And the thing is, all too many people who suffer with things like depression or anxiety, or are just having a hard time, too many people refuse to ask for help because they see it as a sign of weakness. Or maybe they've asked for help in the past and they've been burned or whatever by someone, because, there have been people I've turned to, people have gone, you can talk to me if you need help. And the moment I've turned around to them and gone, look, I'm really struggling, they're going, I don't need this right now. I've never said that to someone. Even if I'm going through a really hard time myself, if someone turned around to me and goes, look, I need someone to talk to, I will sit and talk to that person. No matter how much I'm struggling, I will still listen to that person. But there have been times I've turned to people and gone, look, I'm really struggling. I need help, or I need someone to talk to. And people have just turned around and gone, look, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to talk about this. There was one time I was talking to this person in Italy, a friend of mine in Italy. And I'm sure I mentioned this before. I've mentioned my friend Stephen before. What I might not have mentioned is the fact that he died on my birthday. So every year on my birthday, I get an incredible depression that hits me on my birthday. I really do struggle around my birthday. And, I turned around to her and said, look, I'm really struggling today. I really need someone to talk to. And she turned around to me. She goes, I don't need this right now. Don't talk to me. I don't want to hear it. And I haven't actually spoken to her since, because it's like, you're supposed to be a good friend of mine. You're supposed to really care about me. And I was supposed to really care about you. And I came to you for help, and you basically just turned around and goes, I'm not interested. Don't talk to me. So I was like, do you know what? Fine. I'm not going to talk to you. And I don't think I've spoken to them since. So, even if that sort of thing has happened to you before, you can't let that deter you from asking for help in the future, because it is vital that you do. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. I'm not getting off topic, I'm getting off track. Anyway, so let's carry on with what the lyrics say. It says, so let's forget the story. Another day will come. Your hopes, your dreams, your victories are still to come. Just take my hand, close your eyes, reach out and jump. We're drowning. So let's forget the story. Another day will come. So obviously a person has come to help. So it's like saying, let's forget what's going on here. Another day will come. There's possibilities in the future. Your dreams, your victories are still to come. You've still got so much ahead of you. You've still got so much to look forward to. Just forget about how you're feeling today. Let's move on from that. And not necessarily let's forget about it, because I've got a bit of a rant on that to come. Let's just put this day behind us. There are still stories to be told. There are days ahead of you. There are still stories for you to uncover. There's still plenty of time for you to find your hopes and dreams, to accomplish things that you want to. You can't just sit here in the middle of the desert or in the middle of the ocean and giving up. You can't just give up, you know. There's so much more ahead of you. Come on, let me help you. It says there, take my hand, close your eyes, reach out and jump. So it's like, you know, you've asked me for help. I'm here. Take my hand. We're off, going, have fun. We're off, going, have fun. That was a terrible, terrible sentence. But you get my meaning, you know. Grab hold of me by the hand. I'm going to help you out of this situation you're in, and we're going out exploring. We're going out to have fun, essentially. And then it goes back into that chorus. I drown in the middle of nowhere. I'm falling. I'm falling. I drown in the middle of nowhere. I'm falling. Nothing will ever be the same. Nothing will ever be the same. But I will need you to save me. Save me. And it goes, life can destroy you badly. Life can be cruel. Yeah. We won't give up this time, and love will define the story. So, love can destroy you badly. So it can. Life can throw you some really shitty curveballs. And, you know, I talk about this from experience, you know. Everybody on this channel knows that I was homeless for a year. Everybody knows that I was in a very, very abusive relationship where, you know, I got beaten and assaulted on a regular basis by my girlfriend. You know, I have hit some really, really, really low times in my life. Life can go badly. Life can destroy you. Life can break you down and be cruel. Like they say, life can be cruel and destroy you. You know, but we won't give up this time. Love will define the story. You know, you've got to try and move forward from that, you know, because it is very easy to give up. And believe me, I almost did so many times. And, you know, it's not something, I say it's not something I don't like talking about it, but it was such a defining moment in my life, and it completely changed the way that I looked at things, you know, because going through that changed my perspective, you know, because I lost everything at that point in my life. You know, I lost my house, you know, I lost my home, I lost everything I owned. And that's happened to me twice. I've lost everything I've owned twice, you know, and I had nothing and no one to rely on. And I could have very easily just given up. I could have very easily just taken a long walk off a short pier, you know. But I didn't. I did consider it a few times. I'm not going to lie. It did occur to me a couple of times, but I fought the urge. So, you know, it is very easy to give up, to, you know, and to think, you know, it will be better that way. But it's not. Because whilst essentially it might make your life that bit easier, what about all of the people that care about you? You know, because they're going to be mourning you for the rest of their life. You know, they're going to miss you for the rest of your life. You're going to cause immense hurt and pain to others around you. And you've got to think of it that way. Whilst it might make you feel better, what are the lasting effects it's going to have on the world around you? You know, like I mentioned, my friend Stephen, he took his own life 27 years ago. 27? Yeah, 27 years ago. I think I was about 18 or 19 at the time. And I still feel it now. It still hurts me now. I still remember him every birthday, as I mentioned earlier. You know, it has a profound knock-on effect. So whilst it's easy to give up, there is a knock-on effect. So it says, we won't give up this time. Love will define the story. So people who really care about you are the people who are going to help you. You know, if someone really, really cares about you, if someone really, really loves you, whether it be family or even a friend or even a romantic partner, if they really care about you, they will walk through fire to help you in your darkest times. You know, and they say love will define the story. So the help of the people and the love of the people around you will define your story moving forward. You know, they will urge you on. They won't hold you back. Yeah, and, you know, this is another thing, because I've mentioned about my uncle. You know, I credit my uncle with saving my life, because he gave me a place to stay when I was at my lowest. You know, I was at the deepest, darkest part of my life, and he gave me a place to live. And he was, to me, like a father I never had. I mean, I did have a father, but my father was a complete cunt. He was not a very nice man. You know, when I was into metal and stuff like that, and, you know, I'd have like my long hair and piercings and whatnot, and he'd look at me and go, "It's no wonder you get beaten up going out dressed like that." You know, what the fuck? You're supposed to be my dad. You're supposed to be encouraging. You know, he never encouraged anything. You know, he was a hypocrite. He was a liar. He was a serial adulterer. You know, he cheated on my mother God knows how many times. He was an asshole. But my uncle, on the other hand, he always encouraged me. Always. You know, when I moved into this very house, you know, he encouraged me from that moment on. When I said I wanted to join a heavy metal band, he was like, "Go ahead. You can even use my car to go to practice." You know, I didn't have a car of my own at the time. He goes, "You can use my car." And eventually he went and got his own car, or got a second car, and said, "You can have that one." You know, he always actively encouraged me. And, you know, what he did for me, you know, inviting me to come and live in this house, what used to be my grandparents' house, he invited me to come live here, telling me I could do whatever I put my mind to if I wanted to go and be part of a heavy metal band, if I wanted to go over and go over to the Netherlands. You know, he was like, "You can do it. Go ahead. You can do whatever you want." He was more encouraging to me than anything else. And from the moment that I moved into this house, my life took a different direction. My life changed. My story changed. And that's what they're saying here. Love will define the story. You know, if you find people who care about you, they will help you and guide you and possibly even set you on a different, more positive path in life. So, you know, I'm relaying a lot of my own personal stories here, but they apply to what they're talking about here. And like I said, the song itself is a little bit repetitive because they're essentially saying, with every verse, the same thing over and over again. It's like, if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, if you find yourself in a dark situation, ask for help. And that's essentially what they're saying with every verse. You know, and it repeats the chorus 2 more times. It goes, "I'm down in the middle of nowhere, I'm falling, I drown in the middle of nowhere, I'm falling. Nothing will ever be the same, nothing will be the same, but I will need you to save me, save me. I drown in the middle of nowhere, I'm falling, I drown in the middle of nowhere, I'm falling. Nothing will ever be the same, but I will need you to come and save me, please come and save me." And that's it. So there is a positive to the song because it is someone asking for help, and there is a very short yet brief, that's completely irrelevant statement. There is a short moment where a purported rescuer has come along, said, "Look, you're struggling, you've asked me for help, I'm coming to help you, and I will help guide you forward onto a more positive path in life." That's basically what the song is saying. And it's a good message. You know, it's like, if you are struggling, if you find yourself in a situation where you are having problems, having doubts, and you don't know what to do, talk to someone and ask for help. It's vital. You know, because there are too many people that let it get on top of them, and whether it be pride or the fact that people have let them down in the past, they let it get on top of them, and ultimately the worst happens, like happened with my friend Stephen. You know, he felt he didn't have anyone to turn to, and again, this is something I mentioned before. I always kick myself for the fact that I didn't stop and talk to him, you know, because I saw him the day that he took his own life, you know, and I could see something was wrong with him, but I was late to work. So instead of sitting and talking to him, I ran off to work, and I forever kick myself in thinking, you know, I could have just taken 5 minutes. I was already late. I could have taken 5 more minutes, spoken to him, and maybe that would have changed things. It might have, it might not have, but I will never know. But there is a moment where I might possibly have been able to effect a change in his life so that the ultimate end, what ultimately happened, wouldn't have happened. You know, so asking for help is vital, and counter to that, offering help is also vital. You know, because it's, and I've mentioned this before, it's not something you want on your conscience. You don't want to be forever thinking, what if? You know, and I've mentioned this before with my friend Stephen, you know, to this day, I still have that moment of what if I had stopped and spoken to him that day? What if I had taken a few minutes to stop and talk to my friend who I could see was struggling? If I'd taken a couple of minutes to just sit down and talk to him, he might still be alive. He might not, I don't know. But there's no way for me to know that. There is always the chance that I could have prevented what ultimately happened had I just taken 5-10 minutes to talk to him. And it's something that's always going to plague me until the day I essentially shuffle off this mortal coil. There will always be that what if moment in my life. What if I had stopped and spoken to him? Would it have been different? So, if someone comes to you asking for help, it is vital that you do. And, I saw this thing earlier today. I saw this comedian who was talking about something similar to this. And it's like, when someone says, I'm having a bad time, I'm struggling, I'm depressed, and someone turns around and goes, there's someone out there worse off than you shouldn't be so miserable. It's not helpful. You're essentially downplaying that person is struggling. You're making them feel like their struggles are worthless. That they're insignificant, and that's not true. There may well be people suffering more than that person, but that person at that moment in time is having a really bad time and is coming to you asking for help, and you're basically dismissing them, saying, I don't care, there are people with it worse than you. Now imagine if you did that the other way round. Okay, imagine, for example, you're in Gaza, for example, and the UN comes along and does a supply drop, and this small child comes up to you with a football, and they're like, I'm so happy I have a football. Would you turn around to that person and go, so, there are people in America with Xboxes that are 1,000,000 times happier than you? Would you do that to them? No. So why would you do it to someone who's struggling? You'd go to someone who's happy and tell them you shouldn't be so happy because there are people in the world that are happier than you. Why would you do that? You're basically taking someone, making their feelings feel insignificant and unimportant. But in that moment, that one person, whether they are happy or they are sad, in that moment, they are coming to you, expressing their feelings, and what you're doing is making them feel shit about it. Someone, for example, someone comes up to you saying, I'm feeling bad. Someone's come to you saying, I feel bad, and you say, there are people worse. You're making them feel bad about feeling bad. You are not helping, you are adding to the problem. You wouldn't go to a happy person and say, there are people happier than you, and make them feel bad about feeling happy, would you? So why would you make someone feel bad about feeling bad? Anyway, this is one of those subjects I could rant on about for hours, because it's something that I have personally experienced in both directions. I have asked people for help and they've shut me down. People have come and asked me for help and I have sat there talking to them for bloody hours. Whether or not they take my advice is a completely different matter. But at least I did something. I stepped up. They came to me for help and I stepped up. A friend of mine the other day messaged me at just after midnight and they said, I just passed out, I've fallen over, I've hit my head, I passed out, I'm freaking out. And I said, did you hit your head hard? And they were like, well, it wasn't that hard. I said, well, you should call an ambulance. And they were like, well, no, I live in a tiny island in the back end of nowhere, and the ambulance is miles and miles away, it won't make a difference. And they said, they were worried about passing out again. So I sat up, I talked to them for a few hours, and they said, right, I'm going to go and try and get to sleep. I said, look, if you need me at any point, just call me or message me any time of the night. I don't care what it is, message me. If you're panicking, if you're worried, if you need an ambulance, call me at any time of the night, if you're panicking, worrying or whatever. And I sat up all night, despite the fact that I had to be up at 7:30 in the morning. I sat up all night. I sat awake all night just in case that person needed to call me. They didn't need to call me, and they didn't call me or message me throughout the night. They actually managed to get some rest, and, by morning they were feeling a little bit better. But I sat up all night just on the off chance that they needed me. And that's who I am. That's the sort of person I am. If someone is struggling and asks me for help, I will help. I'm not saying that everybody needs to put that much dedication into it, but, it is important to help someone. And it's not going to be easy to listen to. If someone you really care about comes up to you and says things like, I'm really, really depressed, I'm considering harming myself or whatever, it's not easy to listen to. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But it is essential that you do listen and you help. Because if ultimately they do end up doing something and harming themselves or completely removing themselves from existence, that is going to play on your conscience for the rest of your life if you did nothing. And, it kind of sounds selfish in a way. It's like, I'm going to help you because I don't want to feel bad for the rest of my life. But it's not. Because whilst you're thinking in one way, I'm going to help you because I don't want to feel bad, you're also thinking, I want to help this person because I care about this person. Because if I feel bad about not helping them, that means I cared about this person. And I do care about that person. And I want them to be okay, but I also don't want to feel bad about not helping them. If you get my meaning. It sounds messed up, but it's a very bad way of explaining it. It's like, you obviously care about this person, so fucking help them. I've sat there and I've spent hours talking to people I barely even know. I've mentioned this before, when I worked in Blockbuster Video, people would come in and just talk to me for hours, and there'll be people I don't know, but they'll talk to me for hours. And, I would help them through struggling situations. It doesn't cost you anything to be a good person and to help someone. If someone comes to you, says they're struggling, help them. It's not going to be easy all the time, but it doesn't cost anything to be a nice and good person. Anyway, like I say, I could ramble on about this for bloody hours, so I'm going to stop myself there. Like I said, the musical performance, the vocal performances were very, very good, and I do like it, and I would be intrigued to explore some more of their music, maybe some other Bulgarian bands as well, because like I said, I think this is the first Bulgarian band I've looked at. So, is this a prime example of SEVI's sound? Are there other better examples of their signature sound that they claim that they have? Because they said they have a unique signature sound, but in this example, I couldn't detect one. I thought it was pretty much of a muchness, almost generic. So is there a better example? I'm curious to know. So, yeah. I'm going to leave that as it is. Now, if you enjoyed this video, if you could take a moment to like and subscribe, I'd really, really appreciate it. I've been doing this for close to 7 years at this point, and not even 3% of people watching my videos are actually subscribed, which is, it's a little bit disheartening, because I like to think I do something a bit different. I like to talk about what the song itself is about. I want to react to the actual song, not just listen to it and go, yes, I liked it, or no, I didn't like it. I want to look at a piece of music and know what they're talking about, what are the stories, the morals, the themes that they're trying to get across in the music. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I talk so in depth about the lyrics, because there is more to a piece of music than it sounds good. These people have crafted these songs to send a message. What is it they're trying to talk about? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to you? Is it different from the way I see it? And I want to have that conversation. That's why I do what I do. And I started this channel with the idea of having that conversation, with striking up a discussion about what the music means. What does it mean? I want to have that conversation. That's why I do what I do. So, if you enjoyed the video, please take a moment to like and subscribe. And, it doesn't cost you anything. It takes a fraction of a second, and it does make the biggest difference to me and to the channel. But anyway, that's about all I've got for you for that video. Thank you all very, very much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
I drown in the middle of nowhere. I'm falling.